I'm so happy to welcome on stage a number of well-known names looking at sustainability through the legal lens. So we have Jacqueline Zalapa moderating this session with Fabiana Martins as Priya, Amsha Gengan, JD Rajan, and, well, the stage and the floor is yours, so enjoy.
Thank you, Fabiana. Good afternoon, everybody, and it really is a pleasure to be here. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Sanjam for the kind invitation to be here today at your conference. I was just mentioning to some of the ladies on the panel here that I had the good fortune of meeting Sanjam many years ago in Dubai over breakfast, and it was quite clear to me then, as it is to all of us now, that she was somebody that was going to make a very meaningful contribution to our industry. So on behalf of all of us today, thank you very much, Sanjam. Right, we're here today to talk to you a little bit about ship recycling and working towards a sustainable future. Very briefly, my name is Jacqueline Zalapa. I'm a partner in the London offices of an international shipping law firm, Campbell, Johnston, and I'm a lawyer qualified in 3 international jurisdictions, England, the United States and Australia, and I handle commercial disputes arising under commercial and shipping contracts. I promise we're not going to talk about law too much today, even though we're all lawyers up here on the panel. I'm joined here today by 4 lawyers, Fabiana from Brazil, JD from India, Amsha from South Africa, and Priya from India. But we're all here today, really, because not that we work just within the shipping industry, but we care about it. And we want to work towards a better future and a sustainable future. But the reality is that without the shipping industry, the international trade and the world economy, at least as we know it, would come to an end, wouldn't it? And a ship's life will come to an end at the end of her service life, which is normally 25 to 30 years. And at this point, the ship has generally become difficult to operate efficiently. Not to mention unsafely, particularly if she's become unseaworthy. So at this point, what this means is the ship has to be recycled. That's her destiny. And there are a variety of ship recycling scenarios, but we'll be looking at scrapping today quite simply because it's the most prevalent. Now, more than 98% of all ship recycling by gross tonnage is recycled in 5 countries: Bangladesh, China, India, Pakistan and Turkey. And whilst a large number of ship owners have policies for responsible ship recycling, the unfortunate reality is that almost 90% of the gross tonnage that is recycled is handled in substandard conditions. Now, often the facilities are located in non-OECD countries. And another sad, unfortunate reality is some, and I will preface this as some, certainly not all, but some ship owners have attempted to evade regulatory scrutiny for scrapping a ship at a facility that may not comply with good international standards. And this is often done through using an end-of-life flag of convenience. And at a very high level, an example is a ship is sold to a cash buyer incorporated in a non-mainstream offshore jurisdiction where it may be quite difficult to trace beneficial ownership. And then the ship will be reflagged under a new end-of-life flag of convenience, and typically those flags belong to current countries that have less onerous ship recycling regulations. So what does this mean? As a result, the ship recycling industry often finds itself in the spotlight, doesn't it? And the subject of considerable pressure to basically pull its socks up. Now, there are currently about 300 demolition yards across the globe serving international shipping clients, but less than 10% of these yards, that is less than 30, are considered acceptable according to current safety and environmental standards. Now, a lot of risk is involved with the shipbreaking process for human life and the environment, because about 80% of scrapping takes place by the beaching method in Southeast Asian yards. And this just means the ship is run aground onto the beach with the tide, and then the shipbreakers, who are the workers, they come out and they dismantle the ship by hand, and often exposed to hazardous materials, to injury, or even death. And that's not even to mention what the environment as well is exposed to. And where are we now? Global ship recycling volumes are predicted to double by 2028 and quadruple by 2033. So it's quite clear that action needs to be taken, and it needs to be taken quite quickly. Now, there is a legal framework in place to help progress sustainable ship recycling. And again, we won't go into too much detail about what that regulatory framework is, because we do have the graveyard shift, and I suspect you'll all go to sleep if we start talking about it. But we can't have a sensible conversation about ship recycling and sustainability without mentioning the Hong Kong Convention that was adopted in 2009. And as of October 22, as of last month, it's been ratified by 17 states that we were talking about, that represents approximately 30% of the world merchant shipping fleet by gross tonnage. And this includes India and Turkey. Now, the convention's not yet in force, and an additional 10% of the global gross tonnage needs to be added before the convention reaches the threshold and can enter into force. But the benchmark for responsible ship recycling in the future, indeed today, will be seen as one that is in fact in compliance with the Hong Kong Convention. And it's not complicated why that is. It's simply that the Hong Kong Convention sets into place basic standards for ships to be recycled safely and sustainably. Now, on that note, I'm going to be quiet. I've spoken far too much. And I'm going to ask the ladies joining me to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll have a discussion around ship recycling and sustainability. Fabiana.
Hello, everyone. Sanjan, thank you so much for doing this. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Fabiana Martins. I'm from Brazil. It's a big journey. And I'm partner of SMA, that is a shipping law firm. We work for ship owners, for P&I clubs, especially in incidents, cargo claims. And I think the whole that I'm more proud of in the last years was to be able to work with Sanjan with the International Exco. And so I've been advocating for gender equality for a while. And it's now really a very good moment, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you again, Sanjan.
JD?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Sanjam, for this opportunity to be here. It's my first time at this conference. And also thank you to the Maritime SheEO team. The organization is amazing. It's my first time here, and I just want to say that it's so encouraging to see that people from all parts of the industry and from all geographies coming together and having kind of a united outlook for what we do onward and upward and forward. So it's just very encouraging, and I'm just very happy to be here. Right, about me, I'm now with Maersk, and I manage litigation for claims globally. Previously, I have worked in Singapore and Dubai, where I was handling ship finance, so dealt with a lot of sale and purchase of ships. And also, I was working with a cash buyer in Dubai. So I kind of had a ringside seat to the recycling industry, and I'm just happy to discuss the industry with this wonderful panel of women. So thank you.
Thank you, JD. Amsha?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amsha Gengan. I was called to the bar in 1999 in South Africa. I practice as an advocate in Durban and now in Johannesburg. I'd like to just digress and let you all know that the 16th of November is quite a special day. In 1860, all of 162 years ago, the SS Truro docked in the port of Natal, and it carried with it 342 Indian immigrants who entered their contract of indenture. They left the port of Madras and arrived to serve the British Empire, and those are my ancestors. I'm a fourth generation South African Indian. And I just thought it's really poignant that I sit here today in Mumbai with colleagues and family from India. As I said, I practice at the bar. I do shipping and maritime work, as well as I have a strong background in financial services and corporate and commercial work. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Priya?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Priya, and I'm a maritime lawyer practicing in Bombay. I'm from the chambers of Mr. Venkateswaran, and traditionally we've been doing exclusively maritime law. We do work for P&I clubs, mostly ship owners, for the most part. We do a lot of work with the administration as well in regulatory matters. We've done some work for the Gujarat Maritime Board and other maritime boards on the sector. So ship breaking is something that I have seen up close and personal on the regulatory framework as well. Hope you guys are going to enjoy the session today.
Thank you, Priya. Fabiana, if you can kick off the discussion, from global regulations to voluntary agreements, in your opinion, is the industry plotting a way forward for sustainable ship recycling? If so, how?
Thank you, Jacqueline. I think yes, because nobody's happy with us now. So I think when nobody's happy, it's because we are in the right path with regulations. And let me explain myself. When you're thinking about the global regulation, if someone is very pleased, it's because something is wrong. So now people are criticizing us. We see people criticizing that you are pushing too much, and at the same time, we as industry, we are criticized because you are not pushing too much. So with the same situation, with the same regulations, we are being criticized for all sides. So yes, I think we are in the right direction. But of course, it will not be perfect. You'll never be perfect. We're thinking globally, because I think what the rules have to do, and we have already discussed this previously in the previous panels, is that the rules should encourage some countries. And for sure, it will not be enough for another countries. So this will be disappointed for someone all the time. But if you go back to when it all started, we're talking about recycling specifically. And we trusted a lot on the Basel Convention, and then we saw that it was not enough. And it was only, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it was only on 2000 when we start talking about recycling. And then in 2003, we offered guidelines. And then in 2005, we said we will have a convention. And then in 2009, we had the Hong Kong Convention. And then we struggled to have people on board because we don't need only ratifications for Hong Kong. We need that it's being relevant ratifications, and we have seen in your views that we have specific countries that need to be applying this. Otherwise, Hong Kong Convention will not get into force. And then we'll have the European Union with regulations pushing it. And I will get to the point of the voluntary agreements that I think is also very important, that we were talking about it later also when Cassie said that the industry, it's the time for the industry to lead the conversation, because it's difficult for governments and politicians to make some decisions. So I think all this together, this brings us to a solution that may not be perfect again, but it's what we have, that it can come from collaboration. So if it's collaboration from the industry, from the governments, and encourage, and some patience from some sides, and also some push for the other sides, I would say that, I may be romantic, but I would say that I think we are in the correct path.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of romance, is there, ladies? Amsha, what are your thoughts on how the regulatory framework can better support green, sustainable practices for ship recycling?
Well, I think the earlier panels echoed the sentiment that compliance and regulation should not be reactive. We need compliance and we need regulation to set a framework which is proactive, so we don't wait for the problem to happen. We are agile. The law needs to innovate and create before problems happen. And I think a legal framework or a compliance framework functions on two levels. On the first level, and its primary purpose is to set a set of laws or regulations as to what you can and cannot do. But a different level of complexity would be for that same framework to drive change. And it needs to drive behavioral change from within the industry. And for me, that is how, if regulation manages to drive a culture and a behavioral change amongst all of the parties involved in the shipbreaking supply chain, then that is a change that's more sustainable. And when we talk sustainability in shipbreaking, it's not just about the environment. The other problem that we have in shipbreaking is also one where we have lots of human rights abuses, as Jacqueline alluded to and mentioned, where ships are being broken by hand and hazardous materials and gases not being removed prior to this happening. So regulation can sustain. If it drives a behavioral change, you will see change towards more sustainable practices for shipbreaking.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, Amsha, that the change cannot be accomplished without regulatory support and encouragement. On that note, JD, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on our general outlook towards the recycling industry?
Right, so actually a lot of what you've all said kind of adds into what I would like to say about this. I think firstly, being an in-house counsel, you get this, especially in this industry, you get the unique position of seeing the operational, the technical, different aspects of the industry, as well as the legal aspects. And you also see the perception of people not from the industry. So I think what we need to do, of having spoken to people not from the maritime industry in the first place, I understand that the concept of ship recycling is not understood. We started off in the beginning when you spoke about the journey of a ship and how, in effect, recycling is the end of the life of a ship. So it is death of the ship. Like that, and like death in general, there is a slight negative or very negative thought that comes along with it. And we started off with calling it breaking, scrapping, and now we're finally getting on board with calling it recycling. So I think we need to change or work, like you spoke about behavioral change. I think that can be initiated by understanding what the recycling industry is, first of all. Many of us don't understand. We just think, oh, ships are beached and scrapped and that's it. If we are able to explain to people, again, driving from within the industry but affecting people externally, then we can get many hands on board to actually drive sustainability in this field. If people know that they can partner with us, when I say us, I mean the shipping industry, from all aspects, and they think that, okay, this is what happens in ship recycling, we can take this and use it towards that. So you're giving, in effect, new life to what is received. And I'm not just talking about the steel and the green steel that we're talking about now, but in effect, everything. If Lego toys, broken Lego toys can be used to rebuild buildings, ships are such a vital resource. We just need to, I think, as an industry, work towards talking about what recycling is and kind of working on changing the outlook. And from a regulatory perspective, unfortunately, most of the people who do drive the industry don't have the technical expertise of what goes on with ship recycling. So I think if we do educate, then everyone would get on board and would be able to then, like you said, come up with near perfect solutions, regulatory. So.
I couldn't agree more, JD. Priya, after the Hong Kong Convention comes into force, because it's a matter of when, not if, how do you think it will impact ship recycling and sustainable growth on the industry within India?
So India stands in a slightly different position so far as recycling is concerned. The Hong Kong Convention, while it's not come into force worldwide, India has already ratified it into our municipal law. We have a shipbreaking law in place, in effect putting into practice already some of the measures that are proposed to be put into force by the Hong Kong Convention. Whether it comes in terms of getting certification on what are the hazardous materials on board ships before they are brought in for beaching, whether it comes down to the method of beaching, while they continue with the beaching method, how can it be improved so as to make it environmentally sound and sustainable, and yet allow the industry to grow, particularly in the manner in which it should grow, considering it's an old industry in India. In India, the industry dates back to the early 80s. And in my opinion, the administration, the government has done a lot of considerable work in trying to put these practices into place already to make this a more sound, sustainable growth overall. And we're seeing the change. It's grown from about 80 yards to about 180 shipyards for breaching and breaking purposes in India. And practically, I don't know, I think it's about 60% of the tonnage which comes to India for beaching in this part of the world. So I think regulations must go hand in hand with the industry. The industry has to be cognizant as to what is required to make this a far more sustainable growth in the long run. And that's where I think the regulatory role takes great effect. I think so far as this is concerned, like I said, the Hong Kong Convention, while it's not yet in force in India, it is, it's been put into place already in a more tacit manner.
That's very encouraging to hear. Ladies, one final question, and I'm going to restrict you each to 30 seconds because I've got somebody holding a sign that says 2 minutes. So, on your marks, get set. In your opinion, are the financial stakeholders helping to create a sustainable future in ships recycling?
30 seconds for this. Okay.
Focus, focus.
Maybe.
We're now down to 20
Since I'm a
seconds,
lawyer,
Fabiana.
Since I'm a lawyer, maybe. Yes, I think the financial stakeholders, when they know that sustainability is important, they are pushing and they are doing the job, but there are rooms for improvement when we ask who will pay the bills. Because we need to have funds, we need to have technology, and we, in a global world, we have countries that are in different positions. So I come from a developing country, so it may be challenging to find funds and to find technology. So we need to have this in mind when thinking about how the financial stakeholders can push the sustainability.
Well done. JD.
I think when regulations are set in place, restricting a certain way forward, then we need to come up with alternative solutions that are workable, and that's the way forward. I'm just keeping it down to this, boiling it down to simplicity, 30 seconds.
Amsha.
Well, I think let's just consider for a moment, we are living in the fourth industrial revolution. The grounding of the Ever Given in the Suez did more for shipping and shipping lawyers than any conference will do. So, based on that context, all you need is one shipyard, one ship owner to do something wrong in this day and age, and it is viral all across the world. And that backlash and that reputational risk is what will drive a behavioral change. Everybody wants to be on the right side of the law. Sometimes notwithstanding bottom line, but everybody wants to do the right thing today. And I think if you know that your shipyard is going to be all over across the world in 30 seconds, which I know I'm not, but you will ensure that you will do everything to mitigate and manage the reputational risk that accompanies bad practices. It is no doubt, Jacqueline, a contentious topic. But I think if we have agreement to move in the right direction and to be progressive about it, it will become less contentious.
Yeah, I'm sure I think that's bang on. Priya, to wrap up?
I would just add on to what Fabiana said, is we are equally a developing country. And to bring about a sustainable change of this nature, you do need a lot of financial support. And to equal or to bring us on par with the developed nations. And I think that is where we will need some more support from the industry, from the stakeholders, and everybody has to become aware that they have an equal role to play in the financial development of the sector. It can't be restricted to only those who are financing. It has to be also equally each person on the ground, whether it is the shipbreaker or the ship owner, as Amsha just said. Each one has a stake and should come on board to be more aware of this and to create a better world forward.
Priya, I completely agree. I think that's ultimately what needs to be done, is we need to align interests.
Absolutely.
Amongst all the stakeholders and all the participants. With that, thank you all very much for not falling asleep. We tried to keep it somewhat relevant for the commercial folk joining us today, but thank you very much.